In today's episode of Talks for 10 we hear from Lily Allen, who talks through her life and influences to date, starting with her parents. Enjoy.
My mother is called Alison Owen, and she is a film producer. She is an extraordinary woman, actually. She had my sister when she was 17 and moved up from Portsmouth, and then went to UCL here in London. She had 3 kids by the time she was 24. And she was a single mother. My dad left when I was 4 years old. So she's done amazing things under some quite complicated circumstances. So.
And your dad?
And my dad is Keith Allen, and he is an actor, comedian, and, you know, writes the odd football song.
Me and me mum and me dad and me gran went off to Waterloo. Me and me mum and me dad and me gran and a bucket of Vindaloo.
The only memory I have of us all together is when he left, actually. The day that he left. I remember us all kind of being in the hallway of the flat that we lived in Bloomsbury, and my mum saying, you know, Dad's going. I remember thinking, do we get a new dad? I didn't. He stayed my dad. But yeah, that was the only time I can sort of visualise all 4 of us together. I remember him sort of being there. I remember we only had one bathroom, one toilet in that flat. So I remember on a Sunday, my dad would get the Sunday papers and he'd lock himself in the toilet and no one could use the bathroom all day. Yeah, that's my early memories of Dad living with us.
And how would you describe home life as a child?
I mean, it's complicated. It wasn't, you know, traditional in any sense of the word. You know, my mum was bringing up 3 children single-handedly, and she didn't come from money, you know, so she had to do it all on her own, and it meant that she wasn't there that much, you know. So I don't really have much memory of her in my childhood at all. She used to travel a lot. She'd go to America and stuff, so I sort of remember the anticipation of her coming back.
And who was looking after you at the time then? Your dad?
No, nannies. Yeah, we had like au pairs. They were sort of students kind of passing through.
I've read, though, that you went to 13 different schools.
I think roughly, yeah.
And you were expelled from quite a few of them.
I think so.
You think so?
I mean, I definitely was asked to leave a few.
What was going on, looking back now, and having the perspective?
I just didn't really understand the point of it, you know. I think maybe because I'd been in the creative industries and it didn't really seem like you needed an education to do those things. And I'm not, you know, I've been diagnosed in adulthood as having ADHD. I know lots of people have, and it's, you know, people sort of slightly roll their eyes at it now. But I still find it really, really hard to concentrate and to focus on things. And so I found school a real struggle. I had one teacher, this guy called Alistair Langland at Bedales, which I was at for a couple of terms before I was asked to leave. But he taught classical studies in English, and he was the first teacher that really captivated me because he had a completely different style of teaching, and it really made sense to me. But apart from that, yeah, I wasn't interested.
Bedales, though, it's prestigious.
Yeah.
Private school, isn't it? And you were there only for a couple of terms.
2 terms, yeah.
You were asked to leave. Why?
I think it was something to do with Glastonbury. I sort of remember running away and going to Glastonbury. We had asked the school permission for me to go early and leave it early and go to the festival, and they were like, no, don't be ridiculous. And I just ran away and went anyway.
But Glastonbury, you'd sort of been brought up at Glastonbury, hadn't you? I mean, you'd been going there since you were a baby. Yes,
I mean, I've sort of make a joke about it, but I'm more likely to see all my family members at that festival than I am at Christmas dinner, you know? That's where we sort of congregated.
Well, your father always famously had a sort of encampment there, didn't he? Mm-hmm. He was quite an attraction. He had his own...
like the Pied Piper of
He had his own field
festival.
In a way.
Yeah, he did. And it was always... I mean, I didn't know it at the time because I was so young, but the people that were there were really amazingly, you know, important people culturally. We'd sort of share a camp with Joe Strummer and so other members of The Clash, and Damien Hirst would always be there, and the Happy Mondays, and some of the Stone Roses would drop by. You know, it was exciting. Yeah, it was raucous, but it was exciting.
When did you first start writing your own songs, do you think?
I know exactly when it was, because I had a manager called George Lamb He was a TV presenter, and I think he's done some stuff on radio as well. We'd met in Ibiza one summer, and he managed a band called the Audio Bullies, and he said, I think I'd given him a demo of like me singing cover versions, because that's all I did up until that point. And he said, would you be up for me managing you? And I said, yeah, that'd be absolutely brilliant. And he said, well, you're going to have to write songs, otherwise there's no point in us doing this. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to start writing songs. And he sent me up to Manchester to work with these guys called Darren and Tunde. And I think Smile, which was my first big single, certainly the first thing that went to number one, was the first song I ever wrote.
The first song you ever wrote? Mm-hmm. Can you remember writing it?
Yeah. It was about, an ex-boyfriend of mine, and I was so nervous. And I sort of remember we'd been building this backing track and finding the samples, and then I was writing the verses with, just my pen and a notepad, and I just didn't know what I was doing, and I just thought of the first, big song that came into my head, which was Hit Me Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. And I just kind of followed that tempo. I changed the melody, but in terms of the speed at which the top line melody went, it was that, or it originated from that. And then I put my songs up on MySpace, and they just took on a life of their own. And then the Observer Music Monthly, RIP, got in contact with them and said, we'd like to put your artist Lily Allen on the cover. And they said, well, we don't know who that is. And they ran down to the A&R department and said, have we got someone called Lily Allen on our books? And they said, yeah. I said, well, the Observer want to put her on the cover this weekend. They want to do a photo shoot. And the rest was history. Sort of touched on it earlier a little bit. I felt very invisible in childhood, and so I think in adulthood I was always trying to sort of prove my worth, and it wasn't necessarily in the writing of the songs, it was in the, I can make myself a success. I can prove to the world that I am worth something. And then that did happen, and it all got a bit too much, actually. And then, I've sort of stepped back a little bit when I had my kids, and, the attention and the sort of tabloid prying into my private life and all of that stuff went away as well. And I definitely felt my sense of self-worth drop off as a result of that. And I find, when I do these kind of interviews, or even, stuff about the podcast that I'm doing at the moment, I talk about that period of time a lot, and I think it's because that's when I felt like the most worthy. I don't really want to talk about now because I don't really feel important anymore. It's so sad. But if I'm being honest, I think that's I feel like it's not really, I don't know. Because
you were in the spotlight, because is it as simple as that? Because suddenly people knew who you were, including your parents?
Yes. People wanted things from me. People wanted to be around me. And even though it felt very superficial and the superficial attention felt crappy, it was intoxicating. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a healthy relationship to have with it, but if I'm being truthful, there were things about it that were addictive.
You became famous very quickly. Mm-hmm. And you were known in the tabloids for the drunken behaviour, swearing on television, being the bad girl of pop. Having grown up with your dad in the papers and on television, do you think you were more prepared for stardom?
No. I thought I would be, maybe. But I think stardom as a female is very different than stardom as a male. I was brought up to think that you could do anything that you wanted as a woman, so I was very confused when I got the sort of backlash that I did, purely because I'd been surrounded by men who behaved 10 times worse than I did and seemed to be lauded for it.
Including your dad?
Including my dad and other people.
Did you court the attention, though, do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure. If I'm, being honest with myself, I probably did. I mean, I don't think I would, wake up in the morning and think, right, I want to be on the front cover of the Evening Standard tomorrow. I'm going to go and do this. But, I'd certainly say things or do things that I knew would rub people up the wrong way, or but I don't know if it was necessarily to increase my visibility. I think it was more that I just wanted to sort of push boundaries. I just wanted to do things that people didn't do, you know, piss people off and say things that people hadn't heard before. It was sort of frowned on. I felt like that was my job, was to normalise normalness. Well, what I saw as normalness, you know, just the way that we would speak in the pub as friends. I didn't see why we couldn't speak like that publicly.
Because a lot of the time that was slagging off your peers.
Maybe. Not necessarily, but yeah. Or like talking about dissatisfaction with things that were going on politically at the time, or, you know, just things that pop stars weren't meant to talk about.